Hello, you're very welcome along to another live episode of the Tackling Sport podcast. And it's Daniel here, joined alongside me for more Premier League coverage. Sean, my brother Sean. Sean, how's it going?
Oh, good. How are you?
Not too bad. Sean, listen, we've been, with the GAD, the All Ireland finals, it's actually been hard to keep up with everything with two twice a week podcasts. I guess it's a good time really to have a little bit of review of where we're at with the Premier League so far.
Yeah, it's been I always find it weird when with the Premier League this time of year to get right with everything that's going on in the GA. You've got obviously a lot of golf stuff as well, and you're kind of trying to enjoy the end of your summer. So the Premier League doesn't really start in my head to October really when you can sit down and watch the games. But I have got down to watch a few games and um. I mean, obviously, there's been a couple of standout stories, and obviously, there's a real buzz around the Premier League with the return of Ronaldo and everything that's brought United. So it's definitely it's been a whirlwind couple of weeks for the Premier League, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of people, you talk about the Premier League a lot, people are kind of saying, "Oh, why are you talking about the Premier League?" We're going to probably upset even more people because I think we're just going to do a big six review here in terms of maybe 5 minutes on each club. So we're going to start off, and I'm going to be pretty strict with you, Sean. So we're going to start here. We're at about 5 minutes on Manchester United, first of all. So, and again, all these teams will be in the YouTube description. So if you want a 5 minute recap of where your club's at, because again, majority of our listeners, unfortunately, for whatever reason, ourselves included, are Big Six supporters. If there is still a Big Six, but we'll get to that with the last two clubs, disgrace of clubs in North London. But Manchester United, Sean, where I'm at with Manchester United, like it's the old problems. Maybe this time last year we were talking about Ollie and substitutions and stuff like that. There is definitely a middle ground there, not too dissimilar to the Stephen Kenny thing, where you can be happy with the way he's transformed the club, the fact they can now attract the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo, but at the same time you can be unhappy at certain tactical decisions, and the fact that Bruno and Ronaldo are standing up like they would be with Portugal and kind of controlling the football club. Like, this is Manchester United. This isn't an international team that you really worry for Ollie. It's all relative here. Final point on this, Sean, because you've got Thomas Tuchel, Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, and then you've Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And I know Ollie did well in Norway and stuff like that, but there is a real gap in terms of world class management style compared to those three managers. But yeah, we've under 5 minutes. Let's go.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry really about the Bruno Ronaldo thing. Look, I think
Okay.
that's naturally going to happen with big personalities. Like you liken him there to Stephen Kenny. I'd probably liken him to Gareth Southgate. I just think he's very similar paths and what they've done. They both came in turbulent times, steadied the ship, and gotten their fans and the players back enjoying watching them play, and the players enjoyed back playing for Manchester United. Then there is an element that are they the missing piece of the jigsaw? Is it still there? And I think certainly with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, that question has to remain. And I just think for that, once the red card came, I think it was inevitable that young boys were going to win, and it was just a question of could young boys get the final goal. But they battered them really now, and I know 10 men is very difficult to play against, but Manchester United didn't look like they had any sort of plan in possession, and when Ronaldo came off, they lost any sort of focal point, and even towards the end, Ronaldo was tiring. I'd be really disappointed in Manchester United in the Champions League certainly, and I really tipped them up this year for a big run at the Champions League. Now I still think look they'll get out of the group, they should do, and if they get out of the group, a good draw suits them because they have certainly match winners. But those questions still remain for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and certainly amongst a cohort of Manchester United fans. And if you look at their performances in the league, like Newcastle were really poor. Yes, there's an element of their bigger tests are going to come in a few weeks. They've a really tricky period, I think, to mid October, and then throughout Christmas they have a really good run of games where they'll be looking to mount sort of their title charge and go on the run that maybe they did last season, where they went a number of games without defeat, and certainly their away from home record is something that United really value, and certainly that's where they're picking up a lot of points. But that performance away to young boys, albeit in the Champions League, will have really disappointed Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And then the manner and the way they lost was kind of inevitable. And it did feel like a goal was coming. I didn't think it would come that late. And just for whatever reason, there seems to be a missing piece of the puzzle still missing, and maybe maybe that is in a midfielder, and obviously they didn't address that this window, but certainly that looks like an area now. If you were Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, you would probably have strengthened.
Yeah, and listen, less than 2 minutes to go on United. Final point on them, I guess, fitting in this Ronaldo and this Ronaldo experiment over the next 2 years. Like United fans are obviously so excited about Ronaldo. You can't go anywhere in Dublin without Viva Ronaldo being sung. So I can imagine Manchester is pretty similar. But is there a certain case to be made that a lot of journalists have been saying, the likes of Jonathan Wilson and very respected journalists, that ultimately this won't work or won't end up in what United want, a Premier League or a Champions League, based on the fact he can't press as well as maybe a Martial or a Cavani, less so, but a minute left.
Yeah, and I'm not sure with that. Look, I think Ronaldo, it's proven he's got his goals. I mean, even the goal on Tuesday night was just so well taken. The run was so clever. Look, every game he plays, he's gonna get chances to score goals, and you're gonna back him to score more than most of the strikers in the league. It's just a case of over a season, can he churn in performances? Look, we know he's a big game player, but can he do it away to Man City, or in the big games where United really need to turn those draws last season into wins? So that's the big question mark around him. But the one with Solskjaer is, I mean, this is the crunch year. I really thought last year they had to win a tournament. I thought they had to have won the Europa League, but this year now really feels a massive year for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and it feels like not the end of his tenure, but the end of maybe his first part of being the Manchester United boss. He's got them to a stage where they should be competing.
Yeah, final comment on this. Tim Stokes, United fan, will have him back on the podcast. Solskjaer's done all he can. Not the man to take the team to the next level. Really tough fixtures coming up. Fans won't take many more poor performances and bad results this season. And in fairness to Tim, he's been saying the Ollie out brigade. I kind of thought about him when the United beat Newcastle 4-1, but he's sticking to that, which is fair enough. Sean, we're going to go on to Chelsea, and we actually have a lot of Chelsea fans who contribute to the podcast and listen to the podcast, so it's nice to kind of slot them in here ahead of Liverpool, I think, personally. Chelsea, I'm not as sold as other people are in Chelsea. What sells me about Chelsea, obviously, you've won the Champions League last season. You've got Thomas Tuchel, a world-class manager. There's no doubt about that. In my opinion, very close, if not on a par with Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola. My concern is since the international break, I thought they were pretty poor against Aston Villa, and I thought they were pretty poor against Zenit. And Zenit missed an absolute sitter. And leaving that aside, they actually lost the expected goals at home to both Villa and Zenit. And they're doing all this. They're not creating that many chances. And yet they're kind of, I think Mendy's made a lot of saves this season as well. He's had to make a lot of saves. There's just one or two question marks that I don't think they found the right formula yet. However, you marry all that versus obviously being very impressive away to the Emirates Stadium. And the fact is they obviously won both the Villa and Zenit games. And they're going into the Spurs game. And after me saying all this, I can see them putting in a cracking performance and getting 3 points. So with Chelsea, when I say I'm not sold as much as people are, I just think they're a little bit short of title contenders. But you've got to be impressed with the fact they're digging out performances, and obviously you've got Romelu Lukaku there as well.
Yeah, and for Chelsea, I mean, I don't recall a period where this isn't a Chelsea team that we've seen before. I think this is just a kind of a carbon copy on teams we've seen in the past. I don't think they're gonna massively blow teams away. I think there was a year, might have been under Ancelotti, where they blew teams away towards the end of the season. I don't necessarily see a whole heap of goals in this Chelsea team. I think it was proven last year with Jorginho, their top scorer. The difference is they've got Lukaku, and really where he's improved is he only needs a chance to score, maybe two, and he's put himself in that bracket of Kane, Lewandowski, Ronaldo, these elite strikers, and they're elite for a reason. And the thing with Chelsea is that they don't need to do anything. They don't need to win games 3 or 4-0 to prove that their system is working. I don't think their system or massive their philosophy runs around it. The one thing I would say is, Tuchel, he was sacked at PSG and he was sacked at Dortmund towards the end, where it did go stale there. And what you have is you're at a club where that can happen. So he's got to keep every one of those players on board, and it's very hard to at a club like Chelsea where there is a lot of always high profile names in and around the squad. You've got a lot of young players there, and he's gonna have to find that difficult, because it's obviously not going to call it a honeymoon because they deserve to win the Champions League, but that element of the first year and everything was breezy, and the first time a little bit of trouble comes their way, are Chelsea going to be able to weather the storm, and is Tuchel going to be able to do it? So that's the big question at the moment I have. it is a case of, can they feed Lukaku, and if they can, they'll be thereabouts. But I do agree. I don't think I'm as sold as other people are. I know there's a lot of people out there maybe banging the drum, trying to maybe get away from United being title contenders and saying Chelsea are the real deal. I think there is an element out there of that. But I mean, in Lukaku, they have an upgraded team of what they had last year, and their team won the Champions League. So you have to give them a lot of credit.
Yeah, like Morgan Ryan, Chelsea fan, he's actually himself and Connor Jordan, shout out to them, were at the Zenit game and appeared on the telly there for anyone watching. I was at Zenit, bad performance, inverted forwards aren't providing for Lukaku, and I guess it's kind of nice hearing that from a Chelsea fan, I guess, that, they probably still haven't found the right sort of team. Obviously, you've got Jorginho and Kante in there, and then you've got Lukaku, and then you've got to build that three, and obviously Mason Mount has to play. Do you play Timo? Do you play Havertz? How do you go about it? And I don't know, like, it still seems that, to me, like, they've got that 11, they've got a team, and they've got the individual quality to go out and win a Champions League like they did last season. But the Premier League's got to be consistent and consistent and consistent. And again, you marry all that versus they still have to dig out performances, and not too dissimilar to United. Lukaku is there now, and I guess he's, in fairness to Lukaku, a little bit on him, like, he just looks incredible. His physique isn't extraordinary compared to Lukaku to Manchester United. And all that was something in his diet, apparently, that United couldn't find, and they found an Inter. The Chelsea have obviously managed to kick on. So for 100 million, it seems to have worked. And I guess when you have a goal scorer like that, there's always a chance. But on the Chelsea side of things, are they a little bit short then, in your opinion, of a title?
No, I don't think they're.
You think challenge?
I think they will challenge 100%. And the key with Lukaku is he's in his peak now. He's 28. They haven't signed someone who's a few years younger, and maybe what he was at United. They've signed, the real deal, and Chelsea can do that. They, when you win the Champions League, you can attract these players. And like I said, Lukaku, the shape he's in, the hungerness he has, he's at the age where, like I said, he wants to make something of his career. He wants to win the big prizes, as they say. And at Chelsea, he's got every chance this year. And like, he can score a goal. He's like that Drogba. You kind of, it's inevitable that he'll get a couple of goals and he'll step up in the big games. But what Chelsea had when Drogba was there, and Drogba mightn't have been the most prolific goal scorer and getting 30 goals a season, but he had people like Lampard and your Duffs and Robbins and Elkins and Maloudas. That's what Chelsea need to find. They've really got to get a few goals out of, Mount's got to become a 10-goal a season player, or Pulisic, because that's the one place they are just a tiny bit shy, is in underneath Lukaku. Do they have enough goals?
Cool. We'll move on to Liverpool. That's the 5-minute stun there. We're flying through this. I obviously picked Liverpool to be second in the Premier League, just behind Manchester City. I've seen nothing to change my mind, Sean. And if anything, I've been as impressed, if not more impressed than I thought I would be. I think this Liverpool team is akin to the team 2 years ago. I saw the great Johnny Giles saying that on Off the Ball, which I was delighted to hear. He really fancied Liverpool for the title this year. And I accept a lot of people have been saying that maybe a Champions League, given that they could get the injuries. But I don't know, as long as there's not a serious injury to Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk, the midfielders, as long as there's no long-term injury there. Outside of that, like, you can rotate Jota, Mane, Bobby Firmino. I really, really like this Liverpool team. And if anything, I'd probably change my title pick, given the odds. I think there's a bit of value in backing Liverpool for the title this year, because they've been here before. Jurgen Klopp's been there before. There's a small bit of a Tyrone siege mentality built, the fact they haven't signed anybody. So if they can direct that internally into the club, by all means. But I really like this Liverpool side. They've just gone about their business. Even the way they played so well for the first 30 against Milan, threw it all away, and were still good enough to win that game, was very impressive. And for me, I think they'll be going 100% for the title, where the likes of Man City, you have to prioritise the Champions League at some point, I think, anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think they'll be guaranteed to have a really good season. I'm not sure if we've seen enough of them yet. I watched them against Milan, particularly in the second half, and it did feel like if you took that game out of Anfield, and obviously Anfield's a massive weapon to them, like, I didn't see an awful lot going for Liverpool. The one thing I would say is Salah looks like he's in the form of his life, and I'd nearly put him up there with Van Dijk as Liverpool's most important player. I think he's really escalated himself again. I think for years he was underrated because Mane, Firmino, and the partnership was working. What I just see now is I just think Salah is a cut above most players in the Premier League, and he's what you'd bracket as that elite. And I think the Premier League, to be fair, has got a lot of world-class elite players now. But I think Salah's right at the top of that tree, and the runs he makes, he's so clever with them. He really is probably the best in the world in that position, that kind of right forward role, just in off the striker, if you like, and he can play as the striker as well. He really has turned him into, he's finally getting the credit he deserves from a lot of people. I think a lot of people are holding him back, but Salah is really escalating himself.
Yourself included, a small bit.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people. I thought he was just part of an unbelievable system, but I think he's proven now over time that he is starting to get the goals. But the thing with me is, this year particularly, he's taken on the mantle, and last year as well. What I'd like to see him do is I'd like to see him become that Lukaku, and maybe get the important goals, the goals where you win 1-0, or your big winning goals, because I felt a lot of his goals last year were kind of not in key games. Like, for example, he scored 2 in the 7-2 against Villa. He scored a couple of goals in games they lost. So now I think if Liverpool are to win the league, I think he's got to have to drag them out of holes. And if he does that, and if Liverpool win the league, you really are talking about him in the same breath as people like Hazard and Henry and great to the Premier League.
Yeah, and about 90 seconds on Liverpool, but I guess Trent Alexander-Arnold's kind of picked up where he left 2 years ago, if that makes sense, and that final finish to last season seems to have really, really invigorated him. But himself, Robertson, there just seems to be, like, Alexander-Arnold thinks created the most chances, or is up there with the most chances this season. It just really seems that 2 years ago they're there. Quick word on the Harvey Elliott thing. Obviously, massive disappointment. I know you're a massive fan of his. What did you think of the tackle and the let it flow sort of mantra from the Premier League very quickly?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of them awkward tackles when you're kind of the players coming under you, and you just, it's really hard to explain. I don't think, obviously there was no malice in it. I think the red card on the day is not a fair decision, but like, I think I don't think a lot of it, but I think not to have it rescinded, I think is a little bit poor. But he's someone I've really liked for a couple of years now, and had a brilliant kind of breakthrough year at Blackburn, and he was someone that I was crying out for Liverpool to have, because I just felt for a couple of years that they were neglecting a lot of quality in their academy, and obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold being the main exception to that. But I did feel like there was a lot of really good young players that just could not quite get the break, and I likened Harry Wilson and Mason Mount both had the same trajectory, both on loan at Derby, both had really good years at Derby. Derby got to the playoff final. Mason Mount became, Chelsea's, most important player for a period, and Harry Wilson is, I'm not sure where he is now. I think it could be at Cardiff, where he was last season. So that just shows you. And Harvey Elliott did look like he was going to break that mold and become, a really important player for them. And obviously it's a horrendous injury, and he won't be playing for a while.
No, listen, Manchester City, thoughts on them? I guess they've kind of, not after a poor start, but a poor result against Spurs, they've kind of seemed to get the show on the road. I've been kind of impressed so far, I guess, that Jack Grealish has started every game, Champions League included, and Premier League. There seems to be really kind of like focus on him, and I wonder, will he avoid the Pep roulette that most players end up getting on? But I guess they're probably still worthy favourites for the title. It will be very interesting come Champions League time, because we've talked about Pep Guardiola's legacy. Has to have a Champions League with Manchester City. Surely it has to be a non-negotiable over the next 2 seasons to at least win one of them, and the fact they got so close last season. But I think overall you got to be impressed. Their squad they have is phenomenal. Even though they didn't get that striker, there seems to be so much creativity from Grealish. Like, Sterling hasn't played that much this season. You kind of forget how good a player he is at times. I think he gets a hard rep considering the goals and assists he's gotten for City in England. So what are your thoughts on them so far this season?
Yeah, again, I think they're still waiting to kick into gear. I think it was the same with them last year. I think really just getting their house in order, and I think Pep Guardiola knows now from his time in England that the most important period is from November to January. That's where you kind of mount your title challenge. It's where you separate the pack. And with City, look, their squad is a joke. They didn't really get rid of anyone in the summer. Obviously, Aguero had moved on, but they still kept the large bones of their squad. You look at their depth in so many different areas. And offensively, Torres is kind of turned into a player that is just a classic Man City player. Don't see him for the first year or so, and all of a sudden kicks into gear and is looking like a proper player for them. So there is a bit of that. There is an element to that City are just waiting for something to happen. I think it's gonna be interesting, like you said, how they juggle the Champions League and the Premier League. City always seem to do well in the group stages, and it seems to be no bother to them. I'm not sure if this year's gonna be any different, but I do think if they get a couple of injuries, certainly again in key areas, that then they could really start to struggle. But other than that, maybe the other thing I have is in big games, I think they might have lost their tag of invincibility. I think obviously Tottenham beating them on the first day of the season, but City don't look like they go into big games anymore and are really to bully teams like they used to. And I think they have dropped that down a small bit, but obviously they're still Man City and they're still going to be, as you said, favourite to the title.
Yeah, and I guess it'll be interesting that they can go on that run. The behind closed doors thing is an interesting one, I think, Sean. I may be reading too much into this, but Jesus, Pep Guardiola's interview probably doesn't help Man City fans. It probably shines a light on it. And look, I guess it's tough because Man City have never been as well supported as the big three, the other big three in the top four at the moment. And, you consider that City fans, never pick to have, Sheikh Mansour or all this money. And I guess there's probably a lot of, I'd say there's a lot of diehard City fans. And we obviously, one of our cousins, Harry Dean, shout out to him and Navin, they're big City fans that probably would have supported the City long before the money came. So you have a small bit of sympathy for them, and I guess they're just not as well supported. So it's very easy on Twitter, and it's very easy for me to go liking loads of tweets about Pep Guardiola and the empty ad and all that. What are your thoughts on that? Is it a little bit harsh on the City? But I feel sorry for the real fans and all this. And at the end of the day, it is a lot of money to support a team away from home and at home. And I saw Leipzig supporters getting stick for having 25 away in Manchester as well for that game on Wednesday.
Yeah, I remember listening to an interview about Noel Gallagher talking. I think it was Noel, talking about Man City and obviously their rise. And I think it was him that said Ricky Hatton used to prefer it when City weren't as good. Noel Gallagher couldn't get over that. He said watching the football is amazing, watching the players, what obviously or UAE have done with Man City and the area around it. Like it is hard. Like the thing with Man City is, I heard someone on the radio the other day, I think it was Talksport, saying, Man City are in every game in every league. They play the bones of 55 games if you have to travel abroad. And you're right, they just don't have the historical fan base. Their stadium, has expanded massively in the last few years. It wasn't that big. They still are, a big club. There's all that stuff where they got 32,000 when they were in League One, but I don't know, for whatever reason Man City can't quite penetrate the local community and really, because there is a difference from them and Manchester United. City are kind of more the Stockport area just outside Manchester, and then for whatever reason they can't quite get the full fans. And like the Pep Guardiola thing, I think it's a little bit tongue in cheek. I don't think it's quite, I think it's more to try and get behind the players. I don't necessarily think it's empty seats or any of that, but it's difficult for Man City because they are always trying to fight that stuff.
Yeah, and fair play, like a comment from Spurs fan Jim, Man City founded 10 years ago, Chelsea 20 years ago. Very now, I'd say I'll get comments going on YouTube. But same, James says, Spurs fan, obviously from the podcast, Spurs going to get a in brackets, open brackets, positive, close brackets mention in this podcast today. But we're going to give them 5 minutes of our time. Jim, now obviously he's been giving me a lot of stick for my 9th place prediction, which was obviously without Harry Kane, which I probably would review, which is somewhere in between 9th and 5th, maybe 7th if I'm thinking out loud. But look, I have them down for 9th, and as an Arsenal fan, I'll never hide that bias a small bit. What are your thoughts on Spurs? I guess Kane hasn't even started the season yet, which is good for them in some ways. Like they, Nuno, this Conference League thing is a bit annoying for them. I was surprised Kane started. Very surprised to be honest with you, and then drawn 2-2. It doesn't help things, and I think it's a massive disadvantage for Spurs to be in that competition. Considering if you win it, you end up with Europa League football, and that's it.
Yeah, like first of all, I can't get my head around the Conference League really. I couldn't believe the team had to. So obviously, I saw the results somewhere on Twitter. Went to live score, checked the team, and I couldn't believe it. And they picked up a few injuries there as well. I see James is coming there, and Bergwijn came off early. There's a couple of more players that are struggling with injuries. Obviously, Tanganga got red card on the weekend. I'm not sure what to make of Spurs because I was quite impressed with them towards the start of the season, but I'm not sure how much Spurs fans are going to buy into it because I think they were promised really good attacking football, and I'm not sure they were going to get it under Nuno Espirito Santo. But when you lose playing like that, you are going to get no play. You're going to get no praise from it, no plaudits. You win, I think people will deal with it. I think they'll accept it. But like that, I mean, then you're coming under real pressure. And I think for a club like Spurs with the new stadium and the players they have, I think they've got to find a way of trying to play more attack-minded football, more front football, because like I said, it's all well and good when you win, you're top of the league after 3 games. Let's not forget Tottenham were top of the league at November time last year after beating Arsenal. And it fell away, and that performance on Saturday would worry a lot of Tottenham fans. Just the kind of same old problems rearing its head, a kind of lack of real bottle or quality to get to the next level, to break into the top 4 again. And like I said, if you're Arsenal or you're Tottenham, the top 4 have just leaped them on in the last couple of years. Where it was close a couple of years ago, Arsenal under Emre, Tottenham under Pochettino, they've gone in streets ahead. The players they brought in, the money that has been well spent in these clubs, and now when you're 6th or 7th and you're spending money on players, you have to spend money to get close to spend money again. It's not just a case of Tottenham or Arsenal being able to bring in a player like Lukaku if you've not got European football at the highest level. So I'd slightly worry for Tottenham again. I think it could be a kind of a same old season. I do think they'll get on a run of games where they do win games by the odd goal, 1-0, keep a lot of clean sheets. But like I said, over the course of a season, fans want football they can get behind. And when you have the players Tottenham have, and that's the key, they have Son, they've Kane, they've kept a lot of their key players. Obviously, Dele Alli has come into a little bit of form, although his fitness and would he be able to last the whole season would come into question. They just haven't played exciting football or edge of the seat football yet, and that's the key. And when you lose a game playing like that, you lose a small portion of the fans.
And I'll be very interested, final thing on Spurs, with Dele Alli this season. And I know you've kind of been a long critique in terms of maybe his attitude under the last couple of managers. Poch, I presume, towards the end of Poch, and then Jose. Like Dele, he wasn't playing the Conference League game. It's hard to read into what sort of team he'll come up with now this weekend. Big game against Chelsea as well. And in fairness to Spurs, they had City at home, Chelsea at home, so they will have easier home games towards the end of the season. But yeah, me personally, I'll be very interested in Dele Alli in his kind of role this season, because the likes of Lucas Moura and Bergwijn are injured. Dele Alli's really got to step up. But where do you play him? Do you play him alongside Højbjerg? You probably don't. You probably play him as a 10 on the wing, stuff like that. But yeah, Spurs, that's the 5 minutes up on Spurs. But I guess, yeah, the jury's still out on them. But look, they do have the players, Kane, Son, and they're like 2 world-class superstars that can really kind of fire Spurs maybe towards that 5th place finish. Jen's final comment on this: so many injuries in those 3 South American clowns gone to. Squad isn't strong enough. The 3 South American clowns, Lamella's one, Sean. Or who are the other 2? Would you know?
Romero and Sanchez, I think. Very
good knowledge. Yeah, they are, Jim. He's a closet Spurs fan. On to Arsenal, 5 minutes starting now. Is it because we haven't had a game midweek that I'm slowly getting back into Arteta and trusting the process and reading his interview quotes? And how does he do this to me every single time?
Well, it can't be Lamella, actually. Lamella's gone. I'm just thinking it wouldn't be Lamella. Anyway, the Arsenal, I'm not sure. I'm kind of at this.
I thought he meant the 3 lads that have left. I didn't realise 3 lads that are there. So yeah, no, Lamella's gone. Yeah.
And the thing with Arsenal is I'm at the stage where as long as they're putting out 11 players that I kind of like, I don't really mind about the outcome.
Well, that's a sorry state of affairs to start with.
Yeah, it is. I think with Ramsdale, he's someone who I've kind of bought into a little bit. Just and this seems like a good guy, wants to win. Having watched a bit of Lamelo or Leno toward like Leno against Man City for the first goal was screaming at the top how he doesn't come for that cross. Just the old classic, and the new right back, Tomamushu. I think he looked really good. And I know he only played 60 minutes, but he looks like a player that we needed in that position. Look, I just think with Arsenal, I think it's going to take an awful long time to get anywhere near the top four. But like I said, if they just put out players that you kind of enjoy watching, Smith Rowe's or Saka's, um, hopefully Thomas Partey can get a run of games, because we were promised last season if he got a pre-season he'd be, a world beater, and then he got injured in pre-season. He was against Chelsea or Tottenham once, some needless game. Anyway, he got injured, and yeah, look, you've always going to have players there in that Arsenal side that are going to let you down, completely let you down. That's going to happen. Pepe,
20th
complete.
most expensive player of all time.
Yeah, it's only when you look at 70 million and you think you throw it around easy these days. But God,
we're still paying that back as well. That's the best bit.
Yeah,
it's split 4, isn't it? Just the third of 4
and
years, I think.
and someone like Pepe is like, some days I watch him and you're like, God, how is this guy not one of the best players in the world? And then other days I watch him and then you'll remember, and just one step too many. And like I said, as long as Arsenal put out players that want to, like, you'll enjoy watching them, will play for the badge, things like that, because we're not getting top four. We're probably gonna get either in the conference or miss out on European football. Either that, it doesn't really get you excited. If you win a cup, you win a cup. But like I said, as long as those young players get an extra year playing together, start to understand what they want to do under Arteta, because I don't think Arteta's going anytime soon. I think Arteta and Solskjaer are kind of smoke screens for what's happening behind them. So, I mean, if Arsenal sack Arteta, then they'd be sacking Edu, and they'd be sacking a few of the other guys around there. I think if United sack Solskjaer, the attention turns from the team towards the Glazers and towards everyone who's working in the background. So I think they're smoke screens, and I think that helps them in a way, because it gives them a little bit of job security, both of their managers. So, like, for example, I don't think Solskjaer's going anywhere. I don't think Arteta's going anywhere. So that's the thing. So you just gotta roll with it and enjoy watching, because Arsenal are, look, you've got a couple of outstanding young players in Smith Rowe and Saka, and I'm looking forward to watching Smith Rowe kick on this season, because I really think he can be a real player for the future. And I think it's such a hard position to get into, but if he can't get in the England squad in a year or two, it just shows you how good that England squad is now.
Yeah. And Saka, like, I know in some people's eyes he hasn't started the season well, but on my bit of fancy Premier League research, I think he had something like 6 shots inside the box against Norwich, or something along the lines of that. There's goals coming from Saka is what I'm trying to say. So I'm calling that now. And yeah, I guess there's a small bit of positivity, but it does show as far Arsenal have fallen that we're kind of talking like that. But look, there's a lot of dead wood out of the club at the moment, and that divided fan base is like David Luiz, Bellerin, Granit Xhaka is suspended at the moment, which kind of helps things. So look, it's some, I guess, like Spurs, you're aiming for 5th place. It's very hard to kind of get motivated about that. But look, on the rest of the league, Sean, anyone kind of impressed you in the Premier League? About 5 minutes on this. I know Everton are going well, Brighton are going well, despite their numbers not being, or expected goals numbers not being as good as last season. I guess that's kind of evening itself out a small bit. But any sort of teams to watch out for? Who's really looking likely to finish in that 5th place if Arsenal and Spurs don't make it?
Well, I think West Ham have obviously their result in last night, really good result. Declan Rice coming in, what a player he is. He's really gonna kick on now, and West Ham are gonna have a job in their hand in the next year or two to try and keep him. I'm impressed with Palace a little bit, because I kind of tipped them up to have a really good year. Maybe it was just hope that Vieira would have a good year with them, but they really, because let's not forget how big a job that was for Vieira, having to disrupt the player turnover. A lot of players old, out of contract. They've just had a really steady run of it with Roy Hodgson, and they've started the season well. And I think when you're a manager like that, and a kind of a new manager coming into a club, I think you've got to have a couple of standout wins. You've got to have a real, day to remember. And I think for Palace fans, beating Tottenham, that's a really big win, 3-0. So that gives them a little bit of confidence. Norwich haven't started the season well. Like, it was never going to be an easy run of it. I think they've Watford on the weekend. That's a massive game if they have any chance of staying up. It is almost a relegation 6-pointer. And Everton, really impressed with Everton. Just looked like a really well organised team. The one thing is a couple of injuries to them, and they haven't got the depth. And otherwise, they would be real strong candidate for fifth position. Leicester, 2-0 up last night, I think, against Napoli. Couldn't quite get the job done, albeit up against Napoli.
It was a great game.
So,
that was a great quality game, and Napoli
yeah,
deserved a point anyway. Watching that,
and it does feel like the top four are just miles and miles and miles ahead of everyone else, and it looks like it's just any 9 teams can finish in fifth place, I think, and the rest will just even itself out. But I think there's a couple of teams there that are going to struggle this year. You're already looking at some of the relegation candidates, because Brentford have started the season okay, but you've got Norwich, Newcastle, Burnley, Leeds, all teams without a win so far this season. Obviously, Leeds, difficult start to the season, we all know that, but they're going to have to find their mojo, because, like I said, that this year was always going to be difficult for them, second season syndrome. But the fact that there's fans at Ellen Road and there's an expectation after the year they've had, and the players that they have, and there has to be that, just an element of safety first, and worry about everything else. But I think Leeds will still have a good season. It was always going to be fair.
Yeah, I actually really still like Leeds. I know they've been pretty poor, a tough run of fixtures, but Bamford, Rafinha, it's hard not to get excited by that. It's hard not to see loads of goals, and eventually, like a big team, almost doing what they can against the small teams, or at least beating the teams. And if they do that for the season, they won't only be fine, but that fifth place isn't completely out of reach. If what you're saying is true, there's 9 teams there, then Leeds are definitely a shout. And you mentioned Wolves at the start of the season. They had 4 starts results. Yeah, but again, looking at the numbers and all that, like, 1 win out of 4 isn't great, but they've been quietly impressed me. Like, I brought a Wolves defender into fantasy against Semedo, so that back 5 just seems to work so well, and they go from there. Jimenez hasn't got going yet this season. Not really had the chances either, but my point is, I'd keep an eye on Wolves, and Leeds would be my 2, I think, from the pack.
Yeah, I think Wolves, I kind of like Wolves now. That being said, they were always going to take time to get their first win, but they seem to have a progression from Nuno. They seem to have a little bit more about them, and in some of the players they have, just look at the team they're able to put out the last day. Jimenez, Trincao, Traore, Neves, Moutinho, Semedo. Like, in that, they've got a lot of Podence.
You were impressed with the left wing back against United. The name is
Marcel, yeah, really good defender, kind of defensive first. Thought he had a great game, very tight in his man. And I do like Wolves because, well, I don't really like the story behind them, if you like, but I do like the collection of players and the squad, but I don't really like how it's.
Summarize that in 20 seconds for those that don't really watch Championship football.
Well, yeah. Some of the players they had in the Championship, and the way they kind of went about their business with linking up with agents and the money they had. But I suppose that's kind of not common knowledge or common place now, but I think you're seeing a lot more of that around Villa, who have obviously got owners who want to spend money, and you're never going to stop owners from spending money in clubs. But it was just, some of the players, Ruben Neves at that age to move to the Championship was just a bizarre signing, but he's really someone who's come into his own the last couple of years. So I do agree. I think Wolves are going to have a good season.
Okay, well, I'm just going to run through the fixtures just before I do. In a sentence or two, is the Premier League as good as ever? Is that hype that's building on Sky Sports, BT, all that jazz, is it warranted?
I think there is an element to it. Yeah, I think the managers they have, some of the players that are there, but that, this is after a pandemic where there hasn't been a lot of money spent, and I think it's clear that they've spent the money, and that is the English clubs always had that extra money, and that they've used it, and they've taken Serie A's 2 best players in Lukaku. They've taken other players from other clubs where they've weakened them and strengthened the league. So yeah, I don't think it's an element of that.
It's a simple maths, and even you saying the 2, I actually was just going to make that point. Lukaku, Ronaldo, 2 best strikers in Serie A last season. Now they've replaced that with Eden Dzeko. You know what I mean? It's just the gap in quality there is huge. Premier League fixtures this weekend, Sean, and maybe tell us what you're going to be watching. Newcastle Leeds is Friday, 8 o'clock. Wolves, Brentford, 12:30 Saturday. Norwich, Watford, Burnley, Arsenal, City, Southampton, Liverpool, Palace are the 3 o'clock games. Great having 3 o'clock kickoffs back, I think. And here's me, who was pushing the games every hour, sort of bandwagon. Villa, Everton, 5:30. There's a good game on Sky. Brighton,
Yeah.
Leicester, 2 o'clock Sunday. West Ham United and Spurs, Chelsea are the 2 games on Sunday on Sky.
Yeah, I think that's a big game on a Saturday at 5:30. I think it's a big game for Villa. You know, if Villa do have these big aspirations, I think they've got to beat Everton, because if Everton win, all of a sudden they'll have 9 points on Villa, and they're kind of rival. So that's a big game.
And your plan for the weekend, what would you watch outside of Arsenal, or will you? Are you working, or what's the crack?
I watch a bit of that Villa. Well, one of my favorite days of the year is the T20 finals day on the cricket, where you have the 2 semi-finals and the final, and that's all on Saturday. But there's a break with the Arsenal game, so I get the Arsenal game in. I'll probably watch a bit of the Villa Everton game, and then I actually have to go out and collect someone. And then Sunday, I mean, West Ham United, both teams in European competition during the week, and that's what's going to be the big difficulty. Thursday nights to Sundays, West Ham are going to play a lot of games on Sundays. It's going to be a tight turnover this year, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how they go against United, because United need to get a win, and also what team Ollie picks, because Sancho hasn't started the season well. You've Greenwood, who didn't start the last day. Van de Beek started. You'd love to have those options, but you wouldn't want to be the person who tells someone that he's not starting if you're Solskjaer.
Like, at some point, Ollie will have to drop Ronaldo, just given the amount of games United will play, won't he? And that, or will he?
What I'm looking forward to is if Maguire doesn't play a game or gets suspended, and then Maguire's going to play the whole season injury free. That if he gives who does he give the armband to? Because you've got Bruno, Pogba, De Gea, Ronaldo, and if he gives it to someone like Ronaldo, he's probably not going to take it back off. So for Ollie's sake, I hope Maguire stays fit.
So the best tweet I saw is from United fans saying, "We're really going to make Champions League Varane play on a Thursday night, aren't we?" I thought that was good. But he's a good captaincy pick, in my opinion. Very surprised. Look, not to get too into it again. I didn't get this chance against United. Very surprised he didn't start against young boys. And I think someone like him would have made sure that last goal didn't happen, sort of thing. But anyway, we're going to have we're planning a Ryder Cup preview, and I think we're going to do a Monday night, Sean. Give people about 3 or 4 days to listen to it. It kicks off next Friday. You are the Ian Poulter of Ryder Cup commentary in Ireland, I'm going to call it. You love the Ryder Cup. We watched it. We unofficially took and off the record took Monday off school to watch. I remember I took Friday off TY because I was sick, and then on the Monday I did the same because it got postponed to the Monday. But we watched Graham McDowell anyway, didn't we?
Yeah, and then one of my biggest memories was 2012 when Rose made the putt and just roaring the house down. We made the putt on 17, and actually, not to get into it, but Justin Rose has got a pretty cool Ryder Cup story, and the fact that wasn't picked in 2010, starred in 2012, wasn't picked for Harrington in 2010. If you remember, Garcia didn't make that 2010 team, and 11 years on now, Harrington's the captain. Garcia's made it, Rose hasn't. So yeah, it's a pretty cool story. And then obviously you got some of the comments from America, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, the Brooks. I might actually link the Brooks Koepka interview for all you golf fans who haven't seen it or not in the golf world. Very fascinating interview. I think he confirmed this morning or late last night that he is going to play. Paul Azinger has called him out saying you should let someone else play the Ryder Cup if he doesn't want to play. And look, I wouldn't really disagree with that, to be honest with you. It's like having a player that doesn't want to play for a team. But anyway, it's all golf is golf. These are all golf kind of nonsense stories, but it is kind of feeding it because, again, on paper, America are far superior to Europe. But I think if Europe are underdogs, I haven't seen the prizes. I'll probably have a few bob in Europe and sit back and watch it for the weekend and really support them. But yeah, we're looking forward to that Ryder Cup. We're going to aim to have a live show maybe Monday night in our usual slot if that works for everyone. But yeah, Sean, thanks a million for coming on the podcast. Good to kind of catch up with the Premier League. And for those listening, really appreciate you listening. But yeah, Sean, thanks a million.
Cheers, Dan.
And thanks for those supporting on the YouTube. Do give us a like and comment. It really helps us reach more people. And we've kind of had good traction there recently. And get us on social media. That's where you can keep up to date with all the latest at Tackling Sport. Should be a fun weekend. Should be a lot of posting with the Premier League and stuff. But other than that, enjoy the fixtures that we read out. We'll be back on Monday. We'll write a couple live show and probably chat about Premier League, etc. back on Thursday because there is an international break coming up in a couple of weeks. But all that stuff to say is goodbye from ourselves and have a